Amigos.
It's the role of the Rebbe to learn Hilchot Beis Abchira in the days Bnei Matzorim. We have today the honor to have a Choshev in German, the Rosh Koilel von Yagil Teir in unserer Kehille, Rav HaChosid, Harav, Rav Shmuel Shochat. בבקשה, Rav Shochat.
Okay.
אם יש שם נוח מהר וזה נסיום. Also everybody should please give tzedakah b'tzibur, so everybody at the same time give tzedakah.
I don't know if this was spoken about the last few days. Was it spoken about the Mikdash was in Nahar or Mishur? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I can ask you some questions.
Stop. 15 minutes.
Okay, good. Say that. So, okay, if it was already said, we can say it. No, Chaz of the Inyan. Okay, so the Rambam says, this is in so Beis Abchira Perek Vov, the beginning of Perek Vov. The Rambam says, Loshen is like this: Hamikdash kulo ilahoy v'mishoir elo v'male hohor. Right, the Beis Hamikdash, the whole Beis Hamikdash, the diuk is that the whole Beis Hamikdash wasn't on flat grounds; it was on a hill. Male hohor was built on a hill. And then afterwards, the Rambam continues by saying that the different parts in the Beis Hamikdash, that you have to, how many steps between every part in the Beis Hamikdash, from the Harabayis to Ezras Noshim, Ezras Yisrael, the Azor, etc. Right? So that's what the Rambam goes. So the real question here is what does it mean that? Why does the Rambam has to mention that the Beis Hamikdash was not on a flat ground, rather on a hill? I mean, what's the inyan? So you could say that the Rambam is trying to tell you that Beis Hamikdash was built as a continuation to the Mishkan, and the Mishkan was always on a flat ground. So we would think that the Beis Hamikdash also has to be on flat ground. From this, that the Beis Hamikdash was on a hill, the Rambam has to say that this was a little bit of a difference between the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash. You could say maybe that's pshat in the Rambam. But as usual, we know the Rebbe always points out that the Rambam is halachos, that the Rambam writes himself. And the Rambam doesn't just tell you a detail on the difference between the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash. It has to be something which is negel halacha, that the way the Beis Hamikdash has to be built has to be specifically on a hill. It has to be specifically on a way of a hill, because in a way you could say that if the Beis Hamikdash had to be on flat ground, so maybe they should have somehow leveled the hill and over there built the Beis Hamikdash. From this, the Beis Hamikdash was built continuously on the hill, going upwards on the hill. That means that there's something specific about this in the halachas of building the Beis Hamikdash. And not only that, it's also liikuva, which means that if it wasn't done that way, it means that the Beis Hamikdash, you didn't do the Beis Hamikdash properly. And how do we see it? Because the Rambam says, the loshen of the Rambam is Hamikdash kuloi loy hoye b'mishod elo b'malehor, which means the loshen is very strong that it wasn't in a flat land, rather it had to be on the hill. So that means that this is part of the halach, and this is part of the ikuv of building the Beis Hamikdash. Now, the other way, the question the other way is the Mikdash is a continuation to the Mishkan, right? Also the Mikdash behind the Besoicham, and that was the command of building the Beis Hamikdash really in Yerushalayim, starting from the Mishkan in the Midbar. So how could it be such a great difference lahaloche that in the Mishkan was able they built it on flat ground, and in Yerushalayim they had to build it on a hill. So the Rebbe explains an amazing nekuda here, amazing yesoid in the difference between the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash. We know that the whole inyan of the Beis Hamikdash is Shochanti B'Soicham, right? What also means Shochanti B'Soicham. The whole idea is the kedusha of the Beis Hamikdash. But there was a big difference. The kedusha of the Mishkan was specifically on the walls, the kroshim, the beams, and the yeriyas HaMishkan. That's what the kedusha was chal. The chlois kedusha of the Mishkan was specifically on the yeriyas and the kroshim. It wasn't on the ground where the Mishkan was standing. Horaya, that when the Mishkan moved from one place to the next, the land where the Mishkan was, wasn't holy. The same way like it was with the Har Sinai. Similar idea. That Sheikh HaYovel, once the whole Matan Torah happened, that's it. There's no kedusha there. It's interesting, the Rebbe points out that the inyan of Soitov was already said in the times of the Midbar. So it says over there they have to take from the earth of the Mishkan, it's holy earth, and they mix it in the water for the Soitov. But that was, the Rebbe says, probably that kedusha came from the walls and the yeriyas of the Mishkan to the ground, which wasn't that the ground itself was in the Kaddish, was because the Mishkan was built on that place, on that land, so the land itself got the kedusha for that specific time. So that was in the Mishkan. But in the Beis Amigdos, there was a kedusha. The kedusha wasn't only on the walls, was also on the ground of the Beis Amigdos. Now we see clearly from a few places, we see the Lashon. Meaning the difference is that the Mishkan is also inyan of Arai, right? It was a temporary inyan. But the Beis Hamikdash was the Beis Olamim. That was once it was built there, like the Rambam says, right? Kima shenivna Hamikdash b'Yerushalayim, nesru kol ha'mekayim eskulon livnos bein b'Yis Hashem. Right? That's it. You were not able to build the Beis Hamikdash anywhere else because the place itself was in this Kaddish. It wasn't only the walls that were in this Kaddish, was also the land itself that was in this Kaddish. And we see this lahaloche, very interesting. The dugma, the Rambam brings down that even though the dugma, the walls of the Beis Hamikdash are not built yet, you can still be makriv korbanos there, because the mokim itself is kodesh. The chlois kedusha in the Beis Hamikdash is not only in the walls of the Beis Hamikdash, it's also on the ground itself, the mokim, the place itself. The Rebbe calls it kedusha as mokim. That's a loshon over here. And we also see, like in the pasuk, "Hamokim asher yivchar Hashem Elokeichem boi," so which means it's not only the binyan of the Beis Hamikdash, it's also the place itself where the Beis Hamikdash is. So according to this, the Rebbe explains why there had to be also the Beis Hamikdash had to be built on Ma'ale Ahor, on a hill. Why? Because once the kedusha is chal on a mokim, now there's differences in the Beis Hamikdash itself, the different places in the Beis Hamikdash. There was a difference between the kedusha in those places, right? There was there's Ras Noshim, Ras Yisrael, the Heichal, right? Kodesh, Kodesh HaKadoshim. So you have all these dargos in kedusha in the binyan itself. So even the binyan itself, there was a difference in every area of the Beis Hamikdash in kedusha. So it has to be that in the mokim itself, in the place itself where the Beis Hamikdash was standing, it had to be that the mokim itself showed that it was higher. So it had to, the lowest level in kedusha of the Beis Hamikdash had to start on the lower level, and then eventually rising from level to level in kedusha. And mainly also the mokim, the area where the Beis Hamikdash was built, also had to be raised b'poil b'gashmis. So that's how the Rebbe explains why the Rambam says clearly that the halacha is a Beis Hamikdash has to be built on a Ma'ale Ahor, and not b'misher, b'dafkid, and it's likuva. Has to be loy b'misher, and has to be Ma'ale Ahor. Has to be both. I mean, you have to bavoren that it shouldn't be on flat land, because then you're gonna have an issue with, where's the kedusha gonna be chal? Because there's different levels of kedusha. That's loy b'mishoy, ela b'Ma'ale Ahor, because you want to make sure that the different levels of kedusha are specifically chal on higher levels begashmus. So that's how the Rebbe explains the halacha, how there was a chiyuv to build the Beis Hamikdash in such a way. Now, but according to this, comes right away the question: L'chayra, between the Kodesh and Kodesh HaKadoshim, there was no difference. It was all on the same level. So l'chayra, if you say that the Kodesh and Kodesh HaKadoshim, that's like it's brought down. There are two different levels. Not only that, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, we know that it's a place only the Kohen Gadol went there, Yom Kippurim. So how come there was one level between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim? There was no difference between. There should have been some kind of a step going up from the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So here the Rebbe is mevar al pichsidus that when do you say that you can have different dargas in Kedusha? When one is be'erech zelozeh, when you have every darga be'erech to another darga, then you could say that you could have different levels in Kedusha. But when you have a level which is bein aroich, then it's bein aroich. Then we don't see, where's going to be the difference here? Man, where can we make a difference between one level and another level when it's bein aroich to each other? So we made the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which is bein aroich to Kodesh and any other Kedusha. What is it going to help to make it on a higher level in the Har? What's that going to help? We're not going. The chlois of the kedusha of the Kodesh HaKadoshim is not chal dafke on this specific level of the Har over a different level of the Har. It had to be. Doesn't make a difference. It's in the same level. The Kodesh HaKadoshim would not be able to. The kedusha of the Kodesh HaKadoshim would not be able to be chal specifically on a higher area of the mountain, and that's why. There was no need to, even up Yalacha, there was no need to make it on a higher level. It was enough to have it all on the same level. And we also see this Nekuda in the way that the Rambam brings the way a person enters the Beis Hamikdash. So for example, you have, like the Rambam says like this, Shodom nichnas b'sham mizrochi shel Arabayis. So for example, a person enters from the eastern gate of the Harabayis. So mehalech atzef achel b'shove, he reaches the chel. Everything is level. Oile min achel ezras anoshim b'shtem miles. Then he rises 12 steps to the ezras anoshim. Then mehalech kol ezras anoshim b'shove, ve'oile mimeno le'ezras Yisrael shutchila sa'azoro b'chamesh miles. Then there's 15 steps to go up from the ezras anoshim to ezras Yisrael. Then mehalech kol ezras Yisrael b'shove ve'oile mimenu le'ezras hakoyanim b'mala gvoya amo. Then to go from ezras Yisrael to the ezras hakoyanim, the Azoreh, was 1 mile, 1 step, which was higher 1 amo. Then mehalech kol ezras hakoyanim b'mizbeach ve'oile mishom le'ulam b'shtem miles. And there's 12 steps to go up to the ulam. Ve'ulam ve'heichel kula b'shove. So the lotion is, the Rebbe's medayah, the lotion over here is that from level to level a person is oiling. He's rising. Yeah, it's interesting the way that Rambam brings out the way a person directs himself in the Beis Hamikdash. So he's going from one level, then he's oiling, then he continues going, then he's oiling, then continues going oiling. And when he reaches the Kodesh HaKadoshim, there's no aliyah, there's no oiling. So the Rebbe says that Kodesh HaKadoshim is the union of Bitul. So there's no, when you enter the Kodesh HaKadoshim already, it's not an aliyah. It's a legamri Bitul, ben arich. And that's why, la halacha, there was no difference between the level of the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the Kodesh. So this is the Nekuda. So Taka Bizoiche, which mein Afkamina, du soll boin na Zaif. Was meinst du mein Afkamina? Bei Shlishi, bei Pashtus, bei was nicht? Also ich... Bei Shlishi, wenn nicht sein, also ich weiß nicht. Aber der Rambam schreibt das la Aloche. No, das ist doch so.
Nein, jemand was nicht so kann,
Okay, so no, another nekuda here, just before Ma'ariv, another nekuda the Rebbe points out over here is another difference between Diras Ara, I mean the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash, according to Chassidus, is that the Mishkan was built in such a way of the Seder Ishtalzus, right? There was the Yeriyes, which was Minachai, then there was some Yeriyes that were Minatzemeach, then the Kroshim, and then the Adonim, which were made out of silver, which is Doimim. So there was this, the Seder was a Seder Ishtalzus, Mimal Lamat. So that was in the Mishkan. Diras Ara is in such a way. But the Beis Hamikdash, the Rebbe points out that it's mamish, everything was made out of doimim, right? There was not even, I mean, like the Rambam brings the halacha, even Ha'itz boilet is not allowed to be seen in the Beis Hamikdash. A piece of wood sticking out. And that is because by the Mikdash Kavua, and a place Kavua, the Kedusha is chal mamish in the Mokim itself, in the doimim itself, and therefore there was no need for different levels in the Ishtalshelus. It was enough to have one, and it showed how the Kedusha was chal mamish in the Mokim, in the place, in the Kiddus Habayis. Okay, that was another nekuda that Rebbe pointed out in the Siyah. You sagt, dass der Haloch ist da, sein nicht negeya in von Beisch. Was der Rambam schreibt? Aber was der Rambam schreibt?
Shkoyach, im Yitzer Shem after Tfilas Avi, there will be a siyum.